I really love to help women to connect deeply, really deeply with who they are and to bring forward their truest and most authentic expression um, in their businesses, especially. So I do that through my Divine 90 Day Immersion CEO Priestess, where I support women to package their brilliance and their soul work and their truest expression in a way that will provide the greatest transformation for their clients and support them to really be divinely compensated. So to charge well, to claim their worth, and to really honor the value of their work. So the theme this week seems to have been a theme running through, which has, kind of come from my last weekend, the workshop around birthing the drum. And this theme that's been woven through this week for me is really around the birthing of creative projects and how interesting to note from the weekend. One of the things that we looked at and that was, kind of woven through the weekend, and I would love to give anyone who's interested in this work and in birthing your own drum, I'd love to give you the details for the woman who facilitates the process. So just send me a message or comment here if you want those details, and I would love to share them with you. She's in Australia. If you're overseas, then I'm sure there's someone else that can help you around these things. So what was so interesting to me last weekend was this reflection around how our birth story impacts the way that we create in this world, whether that is birthing a child or a business or a creative project or whatever it is. There's this really interesting kind of overlay that happens, and there are themes that we can see if we pay attention and if we are aware. So it was such a beautiful process that I really wanted to share it here and invite you to look into your own birth story, and even just to bring some awareness to what was that like, because I've known my story forever, kind of, and what I've known of it has been quite, I haven't really delved deeper into it. I haven't had a reason to. So my story is that my mum was induced. She was 2 weeks late with me. My dad was waiting to go overseas and be for his work, and so he was kind of, impatiently waiting for me to be born. And that ties in because I do feel this sense of men being impatient with the birthing of my projects. I definitely feel a sense of that in my life. So that's one theme, interesting thing to note. So Dad was impatiently waiting for me to be born so he could go overseas for work. Mum got induced, and she was told that morning that in this, I should be born by lunchtime. So because of being induced, she was, having, like, whether she liked it or not, she was, doing a lot of pushing kind of thing. So she was pushing and pushing and pushing, and they could see the crown of my head. They could see it, but, it seemed like nothing was happening when she was pushing. And she had to have a drip in her arm because of the being induced, and my dad was in charge of holding her arm down because she was heaving, with the force of the pushing. And it got to the point where she knew she was so tired, and she knew that, like, if she didn't do it soon, she was losing steam basically. So she gave out this almighty heave and this almighty push, and so much so that she kind of lifted my dad. He couldn't hold her down, and then she's kind of collapsed back. I've popped out. She's collapsed back in, like, you know thank God we got to the other side of that kind of experience. And then she's looked at the doctors and the nurses, and they looked at the looks on their faces and then looked down at me, and I'm pink or white from the neck down, and my head is a charcoal blue black color because I had the cord wrapped around my neck, and there was no sound, silence, and she's thinking my baby's dead, and and they took me, and obviously with the pushing and the pushing and the pushing, while I've got the cord wrapped around my neck, with this incessant pushing, it's creating more and more, I guess, tightness and tension there. So the doctor whisked me off into the next room, and within a minute or so, Mum hears this almighty scream and is like, oh, thank God my baby's alive, but still thinking she's got to be brain damaged, from that. So and I came, obviously. They pumped me full of oxygen, and in pretty good nick. I would say I'm pretty grateful. Lots of quirks, and I'll share something about that too, because it's fascinating, and every time I hear it, I'm like, wow. So a couple of days after I was born, and I will return to the significance of the birth story. A couple of days after I was born, Mum was looking down at me, and she said, as a new mother, you're always inspecting your child, like every single inch of your child, intimately. And she said, I was looking at you a couple of days afterwards, and I noticed that you had these tufts of black hair growing out of your ears. And she said, I thought to myself, hey, Cassandra. She said, I thought to myself, this is my mum looking at me when I was 2 days old. And she looked at me, and I had these tufts of black hair just growing out of the tops of my ears, and she thought to herself, oh my gosh, I have like an elfin child. She's like an elf. And just as she thought that to herself, I stuck out my tongue, and it curled around and touched me on the nose, and she was like, ah! So there you go. There's a little piece of history you didn't know about me. So just reflecting back, and Cassandra, I'm looking today at how our birth story affects or impacts the way that we birth creative projects and businesses in this life. And I've just shared my birth story, and so one of the core things is, like this sense that I had the cord wrapped around my neck, and there was this lack of oxygen. So for me, this experience of being in the canal, like I do tend to feel like I'm really in the birthing process, like I'm really deeply inside of something, and it can be quite rough and ready at times within there, and there's this sense of, am I going to make it? And then there's like this massive breath and this expansion into life, and this just sense of choosing and stepping into life and the future and the newness and the business or the project or whatever it is. It's this real sense. So there's the feeling like I have men semi-impatiently waiting for me to birth things. There's that. There's this sense of it being rough and ready, and then there being like this massive expansion. That's the second thing. And then the third thing is that I noticed as being something that definitely I've felt in my past, and I'll be aware of from now into my future, is this sense of, my doctor was a male, and he was there, and definitely a strong part of me being able to be in this world and to have oxygen. And essentially, obviously my mum gave me life and my dad, but essentially he also gave me life because he was the human that was in between me living or dying in that moment. So this sense of being rescued by a man. So I know that this is something that, never in my wildest dreams would I want to admit, never would I want to admit as a modern independent female that there is a part of me that does or has ever, desired to be rescued by anyone, including a man. But I can see that really, really, really down deep inside, there has been this part of me that has had that desire of, oh, wouldn't it be nice just to have someone rescue me, kind of thing. So yeah, I just wanted to share some of those reflections with you and really invite you to have a look into your own story of birth. So there were so many different parts of that. There was like, how my dad and my mum were feeling. There was like, what was the actual like lead up? Was I late? Was I early? What was the actual process like? What was the situation like afterwards? Who came to visit my mum and my dad? Did they feel supported? All this kind of stuff. So really interesting. If you have an opportunity to reflect on those things, you can either ask your parents, if they're still of this world. You can, go into meditation and intuit perhaps what your scenario was, or parts of it, the feelings around it. And yeah, just to have a look at perhaps what some of the themes are. It brings a really another layer of depth, I believe, to this work and to this understanding of ourselves and the way that we birth things into the world, and it can be very, very powerful. Now, some of you may be aware that I have birthed. Hey, gorgeous! Thanks for watching, Cassandra, beautiful, and for your thumbs up. Um, I this week I have launched not only my website, my new website, which is www.womenofimpact.com.au. I have also birthed or launched my upcoming masterclass series called Embodying Divinity. And this is all about looking at, how our spirituality, our personal development, our feminine empowerment, how these things actually can have an impact, a positive impact on the collective, and how we can actually create global change through our personal and individual empowerment. So, why it's important for us to do this work. So, yeah, check in with your mum, absolutely. Yeah, if you have the opportunity, definitely do it. So I just had the first interview this morning with a divine woman, and it just reminds me. I had a podcast a year ago and I absolutely loved it. I love having meaningful conversations. I love going deep. I love understanding more, and I love learning more, and I'm such a sponge when it comes to everything. Um, So I had just the most amazing conversation with this beautiful woman. She's over in the UK. I haven't met her before. I've reached out to her. I've admired her. I've reached out to her to invite her to be a part of this masterclass series. She said yes, and the rest is history. So this is going to be such an incredible event. It's running in conjunction with International Women's Week. So from between the 7th and the 13th of 7th and the 13th of March. That would be next month. And yeah, I would just really, really invite you to join us. There's 10 incredible speakers, and this, I just, there's so much value for me in being a part of this and facilitating and being able to hear these women's stories. So there's value in the sharing of our stories, and there's value in the listening to others' stories and seeing how and if they resonate with us, and what we can take away, what we can learn, without necessarily having to go through all the hard yards ourselves. What can we pick up along the way that can add to our lives and our own experience? So it's super beautiful, and I really would invite anyone who feels like this is a resonance to them to join us. So the website for that, the link I'll pop in the description after this, and it's www.womenofimpact.com.au/IWW for International Women's Week. So, yeah, that's what I really love to share with you today, and I hope everyone is, just having a beautiful time of life and thinking deep into the truth of who you are, because who you are is beautiful, and what you have to share is really important, and we need you here. There's no accidents. So, thank you for being a part of this group. I'm sending you so much love, and I look forward to you joining us for the masterclass series. Alrighty, bye bye.